Thank you all so very much for being here today. Welcome to our Skill Up session today. My name's Emily Springer. I'm a learning specialist at National University, and I am thrilled to have Dr. Chad Becker here with us today and his colleague, Dr. Kelly Tribble. Today, we are going to be discussing the NU Institutional Review Board, an overview of the resources, services, and application process. Very brief housekeeping items. I am recording today's session. Please utilize the chat. Dr. Tribble is here as an expert, joining us from the IRB, who will be able to address questions in the chat as time permits. You are more than welcome to put questions in the Q&A. And because we have such a large audience today, keep in mind that we'll most likely be fielding questions from just the chat and the Q&A today. Dr. Becker has been kind enough to mention that if we don't get to some of your questions today, I will go ahead and provide him the transcript of the chat, and they will address those questions, and I can send them to all of our registrants as a follow-up. The PowerPoint will be provided as a PDF, and we will, of course, provide this session in our Skill Up section, of our Graduate Studies Support Center. Without further ado, I think that about covers my housekeeping items. If you need me, you can find me in the chat. I will be passing this over to Dr. Becker.
Well, thank you so much, Emily, and welcome to our webinar. We have the basic kind of overview, right, of the IRB that we're going to go through. You can see we have our title, and I also included our description. So we'll get to that here. And you've seen this if you registered, but I'll leave it up there just for a second to remind you of what we'll be discussing today. We're going to look at the resources that we have available, the services that we have available for help, and then a little bit about the process as well. So I'd like to introduce the staff. I'm Chad, and I work as an education analyst for the IRB. We also have Dr. Tribble here, who is an education analyst as well. And of course, Emily is hosting our meeting today. So thanks everybody for coming. And we're going to show you a few resources really quickly before we get started. As Emily had mentioned, we'll have our recording on the GSSC website. Specifically the Skills Up webpage. I put both of those there, so you'll see some hyperlinks in this PowerPoint presentation because we wanted it to be a tool later, and I'll be jumping to some of these locations throughout the presentation, not this page necessarily, but we also have our own IRB webpage called Webinars that you can find this on, and I will be showing you our IRB website, so we'll see that webpage here in a few minutes. We also have a YouTube channel for the IRB, and the technology depending, we'll see if we can get that up there as well. We are going to have the question and answer options throughout, so please do submit your questions as you have them, and we have built-in moments where Dr. Tribble will throw a few of the really important questions, common questions that he sees in the chat to me, and I'll answer them. We'll also have some time at the end where we can do that. And as Emily had said, we're going to get the written answers to all of your questions out to you through email. I'm going to post that as well to our webinars page just under where we'll have this webinar noted. I also have the PowerPoint slide presentation that I'm giving today on that website right now. So if for some reason you're not able to see our screen, but you have another one, go to our website and you can follow through the PowerPoint that's there. All right, so let's just get started. Our purpose, briefly, won't be getting into too much detail about anything. We have places, times that are better for that I'm going to describe to you today. But we're going to talk briefly about the purpose of the IRB, why they exist, and sort of what we do. And then resources, services, application process. This is really what we're here to discuss. And again, we have that question and answer options available to us as well. So our purpose is really to protect human subjects. were a committee designated to the protection of human subjects in research. And that power is derived from federal policy. Some of you may have seen some of this information depending on any of those courses you may have taken through CITI, but here is a link to the common rule, the federal policy that kind of initiates IRBs. We need them because in the past, there has been mistreatment and abuse of human subjects and research. So these are really important moments in history that I'm going to gloss over, but I have provided some links so that you can investigate these historical moments a little bit further. I have just the two that I've pulled out, the first being the Nuremberg trials and the code that developed from that. Obviously, the abuse of German concentration camp prisoners is what precipitated this trial and the ensuing code. So I have the code linked here on our Health and Human Services website. So I tried to provide very primary and authentic links for people. And there's also the trial that you can kind of take a look at. And this is the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum link. Generally, though, the three things that emerged were that research needed to be done for the good of society and conducted by qualified persons, and that risk that might be undertaken by anyone does not exceed the reward, right? The importance of the problem to be solved. We wanted to make sure to indicate that this was a moment in history where human subjects have the power to stop the experiment. Obviously, in this scenario, as prisoners, they did not. But before this, there was never really rules that governed human subjects research. So it is interesting to take a look at these historical moments. The second and final one that I'm going to show you is some thing that maybe you're, as an American, you're a little more familiar with, the Tuskegee study about syphilis. And this was an actual public health government study. So I have a link here where you can go read about that at the CDC website. And of course, the government knew that the participants had syphilis. About halfway through the time period of this study, penicillin was created. And so these folks could have been cured, but were not, because the study was about the effect of the disease. And of course, after some investigative journalists did their best to expose what was happening, and this is a great New York Times article about it, we came up with a couple of more rules about human research that we need to protect them most generally, and that they need to know and volunteer to what is happening to them in the research. So these are sort of the big rules that govern the creation of IRBs and why we do what we do. It may seem a little distant from some of the research that you're familiar with in academics, kind of social, behavioral, educational research, but these concepts do apply. And you'll find out just how much they do as you work your way through the IRB and need to produce certain components of your application to show us how you're protecting your human subjects. All right. The last thing I want to talk to you about is the Belmont Report. So you will learn about this in your city training if you haven't already. It was linked here, and this is an official government document, again, from the Health and Human Services program. And we essentially decided as a society that there were three important components to any research: respect for persons, beneficence, which essentially means a moral obligation to your participants, and then justice. And that often in this context refers to the people who are involved in the research are going to benefit from the research. It's not for the benefit of the rest of us, right? It's for not only the benefit for the rest of us, but also for them. So when is an IRB required, you might be asking. You may not have heard of anything up to this point that sounds like what you want to be doing for your research, but essentially the IRB is required anytime you're doing research on human subjects. And you can see that about whom is italicized. So some research does not qualify when, say, you're asking someone about something maybe that you're showing them, but not about them. And sometimes this can be a little confusing for folks depending on what program they're in. But this is the first clause, is that you're doing research about living individuals. And then it's research. Okay, so that typically means that it's published or going to be published in some way. So that's why every dissertation, right, essentially goes through the IRB. And of course, there's other places to publish. And it's also why a course assignment that you might be asking a few interview questions of people for a master's level or a doctoral level course, something like that, isn't necessarily something that the IRB would review, because it's not to contribute to generalizable knowledge. It's a bit more specific of a purpose for that course that you might be in. All right. Just a few bits of information about the NUIRB. And we want to make sure everybody knows that they can come to us, right? So all community members, whether you're a student, staff, faculty, administrator, doesn't matter what program you're in. If you're a student PI, you can utilize our services at any point in your program. So if you began your dissertation program yesterday and you want to come and engage us, you can. For dissertation student PIs, you do not need to be enrolled in the IRB course. So depending on your program, the course numbers might differ, but you don't have to wait until then in order to engage us. At any point, you can come to our website, come to our services that I'll be describing today. So please think about that. Sometimes people come and they say, I wish I had come earlier. Not only because they could have saved some time, because IRB materials can be a little time intensive, but also because we can sometimes help with your understanding of basic components of research, not necessarily your method or your design, but there's a lot more to it than just those things. Let me stop for a second and ask Dr. Tribble if we have any questions that are popping up that might need answers.
Yeah, we do. Thanks for stopping. Renee asked a good question about would, and I'll just read it verbatim, would a data set that is publicly available to those that request access and sign a data use agreement be considered open access? That's our first question. And if using this data set is proposed, at what point in the study should a student reach out to the appropriate entities for access, and does the IRB need to be involved?
So yes, we do have a component of our application for archival studies, and it's a short form. It's not as long as the IRB application that people who are doing human research, human subjects research would complete. The sections are quite fewer. And you are using some of the correct terminology, your data use agreements. Those are all to be submitted with your application. So you can upload a description of what it is that you're doing, provide us that HTTP address if it's a public data set, provide us with the data use agreement if that's part of your study. And the timing question, I would say, as a dissertation chair as well, just making sure that you are far enough along in your research that you really know what it is that you're doing before seeking, kind of the access to the data. But sometimes it can take a little while to get that back from whoever is the permission grantor. So don't wait until you're ready to, fill out or begin your IRB application. Decide with your committee chair as quickly as possible if this is the direction that you're heading in, and then initiate the use of that. You wouldn't want to get too far along in your project and realize that you're not going to have access to the data that you were hoping to. But yes, for us, we would need to see that you have that approval. And if it is a public data set, we just need to see where it is and that it is in fact available publicly. So part of our application provides opportunities for you to indicate that to us. Hopefully that answered that question.
I do have a
Follow up in the
more
chat
here.
if you need to.
I do have a couple of more here if you want to check if you have time.
Yeah, let's do two more,
okay.
let's say.
Great. Jason asks, I am about to finish the requirements for my proposal and I am in week 3 of DIS 9902. Does that mean I have to wait for the rest of this course to finish to start the IRB process in DIS 9903?
Yeah, so really the only thing that we require you to have before you can begin the actual application process with us is a completed and approved doctoral or dissertation proposal, whichever your program might call it, depending on, there's a couple different programs that we have. So that's it. As soon as you have that, you are able to move forward, irregardless of the class that you're in. So it sounds to me like you're going to have that approval before you're done with the O2 course. And if you want to come and learn how to begin your application and begin and complete your application with us while you're in O2, that's fine.
And then the next question is, my dissertation is based on secondary data analysis, not quantitative. Since I am not doing research per se, why do I need IRB?
I guess that one might be a little tricky to answer. Secondary is not necessarily not quantitative, so I'm not exactly sure I'm understanding that question entirely, but essentially think of it this way. If you are in one of our programs where the end product is a publishable document, like most of our terminal degree programs are, you have to show us what you're doing. And essentially, we can look at it and say, oh, that's not human subjects, and we'll tell you that. But you do have to move through the IRB since you're doing research. It is publishable, and we're the ones that, kind of get to make the decision about what level of involvement with or without human subjects. So think of it that way, and then know that if that's the type of project that you're doing that doesn't involve human subjects research, or even our previous question is archival, it's a very short application process and something you can move through very quickly. So hopefully that helps. All right, so let's move forward with our content presentation, and we'll answer all of those questions eventually, either later today or through email. Good questions, though. There's a lot to the IRB. There's a lot to understand, and hopefully it's making some sense. All right, so our website is our main resource. It's where you can find most of what we have produced. This is hyperlinked here, so you can always find our website there if you haven't seen it already. You may have registered through the Commons links, but it's common that folks do see our website first. Now, each of these are hyperlinked. So I am going to visit some of these pages to show you just what we're looking at, but you can always come back to this slide on your own and link there yourself. You'll see here on the left-hand side, the order essentially follows the order of the tabs on the website, and it is sort of chronological. So getting started with the IRB is, of course, a good place for us to start today, and for you yourself to start when you're heading back. We have the tabs that go across the top, as I had just mentioned, that are the bulk of our resources. So getting started will help you make sure that you're beginning in the right way, accomplishing the basic tasks before you can submit your application. We go through these briefly here on the left, a little bit more info in the middle if you want to take a look and use our links. But generally, city training, which many of you will take during your coursework if you haven't already. So a lot of times by the time you come to the IRB, you've already accomplished that. We have one course with a set of modules that are required for the IRB. And we have some institutional policies. You know, what can you do as research in our university? Can you use university resources? What are some basic rules that we have about NU research? And then we have a tool that will help you think about just how doable or feasible your study is. Now, obviously, working with your committee and chair, you've discussed some of these issues, but we do find sometimes that when people come to us, they realize that what they are thinking they want to do isn't going to be possible, whether it's because they won't be able to access the population or there some other reason that makes it impossible to do the research that they want to do. And we want you to learn that as quickly as possible. So there's a good worksheet that forces you to ask questions of yourself about your study that can really give you a broader perspective than sometimes committees and chairs are able to do. We have all kinds of services that will help you prepare your supplemental documents, and we'll be showing you some of those in the next part of this presentation. But essentially, you've got some things to prepare, and this is true for almost everyone. Some of the cases that were described earlier, it might not be if you have an archival data set and things like that. But I would say about 98% of our dissertations that we see, of our research projects that we see come through, are human subjects. And so that involves like recruitment materials, right? And consent letters, things like that, that we'll talk a little bit about here in the future. So that's what we mean, making sure you have all of your supplemental documents, and then you can begin your application. So we're going to show you that too. We're going to show you how to do that, where to find the resources for beginning. But this is a very basic roadmap for you to follow as you get started with us. Learning requirements, I have linked here. We generally described those a little bit a second ago, but please go there, take a look at them. There's about 9, it's about a 5-minute read for requirements. Special guidance, you may have certain aspects of your study that require a little bit more explanation, maybe some expertise. Are you doing an international study? Are you doing a study where participants maybe are involved in suicidal ideation, something like that, that we want to make sure that you're understanding that our goal is to protect human subjects, and there's some rules to the research that you do through us. I'm not going to bounce each time because it might get a little difficult to watch, but we are going to look at the Prepare IRB Documents page. So I'm going to link there now because this is a big one. This is a huge resource for our applicants. And excuse me, while I go back, it looks like I'm trapped. So our IRB Documents tab. So you can see we worked our way through learning requirements, and I'll leave this drop-down menu down for just a second so that you can see what some of our requirements might be. We have military research, we have sensitive and triggering topics. So it's good to read these documents, especially if they pertain to your type of study. For special guidance, again, we have a couple of different documents here to help guide you for specific types of research. This is our newest one because some of our programs, people are doing, program reviews or QA/QI style studies, and those still intersect with the IRB. So we want to make sure that you're understanding the subtle differences sometimes in research topics. Okay, so our Prepare IRB Documents drop-down menu is a good one to spend a little bit of time on. You may have noticed the line underneath on the slide was templates. So here's where we'll show you a few of those basic templates that will help you create your supplemental documents. We have important components of almost every research study, certainly every human subjects research study, like eligibility criteria. Who are you gathering to research? Recruitment materials. How are you gathering them to research them? And then consent. How are you getting their consent to be a participant in the study? So I want to show you a couple of these pages briefly, but all of these can be important for your study, some of which won't apply depending on what it is that you're doing. We even have some information about surveys and questionnaires here. You'll see site permissions is a big one. And a lot of these topics are covered in our services that we'll be talking about soon. So if you have questions after reading through these pages, you're able to come talk with us in various settings. And I'll describe that briefly soon. But let me show you our recruitment page, for instance. We have some information about how to go about recruiting. And then we have our templates on the left-hand side. And you can see we have quite a few because there are quite a few different scenarios that we see people doing research about. Maybe you're recruiting through email. So we have a template that fits really nicely with a typical plain text email. Maybe you're recruiting on social media, and that's a slightly different platform. So our template helps you create materials that fit, say, Facebook or LinkedIn a little bit better. You can even make flyers and put them in places as long as you have the right permissions. So we have templates for those. You can see that some of our studies involve children, and there's a parent and a minor component to it. So it really just depends on what type of study you're doing as to which supplemental documents you need to prepare to be ready to apply. Just want to show you the consent page really quickly so you can see we also have a couple of templates for the different kinds of ways that you might reach out and get consent before you collect your data. We even have some examples here as well. All right, so we do have a few more. Sorry about that. Bounce back to that page. I just like those transitions so much. I wanted to watch them again. All right, so links to our services. This will be the next section of the presentation where I actually describe to you our services. So you'll see what we have available. And the next time I bounce to our website, I'll show you where you can find those. We do also and have begun earnest effort to create help materials. So we know that not everyone can come to our services, time restrictive. We're trying to make it so that you don't need our services. But if you do, we're very welcoming to have people attend them, learn, and even get feedback on some of their work. But you'll find that we have a burgeoning help materials section to our website that involves videos and other resources, short videos that you can watch to learn components of putting together your application. We have our YouTube channel and newsletters as well. So let's take a look at some of these. I'm going to link us to our social media, our IRB services page. We're on the landing page here for IRB services, and you can see we have group sessions and office hours. I'll talk about those in more specificity here in a few minutes. But I also want to show you our help materials page where you can find some videos. Again, we're just getting started on these, so we don't have too many of them yet, but we're starting at the beginning. So hopefully as we build our database here, you'll be able to work through. Here's our YouTube channel that's linked where you can find these help materials as well in a different venue. We have our IRB newsletters, which will be bi-monthly, and we've just started this. Let me open this and show it to you really quickly so you kind of see what we're doing with our one-page newsletters. We have some information, maybe some terms, descriptions of our services, and these are all hyperlinked too, so you can use this as a neat tool to refer back to if you're looking for certain things. Even if you want to learn a little bit more about our mascot, Nabby. We even link that there for you. So there is some good information available on our website. And here on our webinars page, you'll see that this is where we include our information about these events. I have the PowerPoint presentation there now. And this is where our question and answer will show, as well as a link to the video recording. seems like a good time to stop and ask any more questions.
I've been working on answering these. We do have an interesting one that's I don't know. It's less of an IRB related one, but I thought this person we could maybe answer it. He says my study is evaluation of the live training program, and he's basically going to have like 6 to 12 months between pre and post test data collection, and he's basically saying since we've got these 12-week courses and IRB classes, 993. He's trying to figure out how to rectify this with his 12-week class. And so I was in my mind thinking about, students do take time off sometimes between courses, I believe, but our requirements are that you must be enrolled during data collection. Is that correct?
Yeah, so to apply and to go through our process, you can do that as a enrolled student who may not be in a course, but for data collection component, you do need to be registered for a course. So there are ways to, game the system, let's call it, where you don't necessarily have to be enrolled in a course to utilize our services to apply, but federal regulations require you to be enrolled when you are collecting data. And yes, the courses and the 12/8 week length of courses are certainly one of the things that our students bump up against. You'll hear me describe our process and how long it takes to get a review done a little bit later. But we don't never want to be the reason that you have to take another course. And we have worked diligently to bring review times down from multiple weeks to essentially less than 1 week for an IRB review. So we're doing our part, we think, to help with that situation, which is a very real one for our students. Anything else?
Yeah, Celia Foster asks, do I need a DUA if the institution's IRB has provided an online document detailing the data that they are willing to share? In this case, can I use the online document instead of DUA?
Sure, absolutely. That sounds like an equivalent resource and would suffice for uploading to your application as the data use agreement. Sometimes people have that question about site permission. Do I need to get a site permission when I have the IRB approval from another institution? So say you work at a different university or a K-12 scenario and they have IRB. If you get IRB approval from them, we pretty much sign off on it. We don't need to see a bunch more information because we trust IRBs, just like we would want to be trusted. Sometimes the institution that you're gathering data from wants us to look at it first. And we also have a mechanism for that where we approve with conditions. You can give that to the other IRB and initiate their review using that. So we have a couple of different ways around the trying to make it efficient for researchers to get the right people in the right places giving the permissions. Right. How about one more?
Yeah, one more. All right. Deborah asks if site permissions, basically. If I'm attempting to recruit teachers, or if I'm wanting to recruit teachers for my study, K-12 teachers, and I have their personal email addresses, do I have to obtain site permission from the school if I use their personal emails? Also, if I'm an employee of that district and the emails are publicly available via the school website, do I need site permission?
Okay, so they have two different questions, but dovetail nicely. So if you have your Rolodex of right, what we used to call it, of contacts, and these are part of the professional networks you've built over the years, and you own those web email addresses, then you do not need permission from anyone to use them, especially if they're publicly available. So sometimes people will say, well, it's this person's email address, but it's their university or their K-12 email address. If that is on a public website that anyone can go to and find, then that is not something that you would need permission for. If you're going to interview them at the site, or maybe collect documents from their work or observe them in their classroom, then yes, those are resources that you would need permission for. But if it's a publicly available email address and that's the only resource that you're using, then we do not require site permission for that. I think I answered both of those questions. All right, sounds good. So let's move into our services component of our presentation. So you've seen our resources, we've gone through our website, I showed you where you can find this, but let's take a deeper look at the services that we provide. These are regularly occurring and self-schedulable. So we offer them, we have a calendar, and you sign up for them. You can come as many times as you need to any of our services. So let's take a look at the common ones, well, the only ones, the 4 that we have, essentially 5, 6. How many things do I have here? 7, 6, I think. We have our group writing sessions, and these are a big one. These are where you can come, receive a short presentation about the topic. So for instance, eligibility, recruitment, consent. And then you have the opportunity to, previous to the session, submit a draft of your work. Eligibility criteria list for the eligibility session. Maybe it's an email that you're going to use to recruit. Maybe it's a flyer. And then one of our consent forms that you might submit, having completed it in a draft way, to get feedback. What we do is, after the short presentation, these are an hour long, you're in the room with a handful of other people. After our short presentation, we go through the feedback in front of you so that you have a verbal description of what we have inserted in the right-hand comments, and then we send that to you via email after the session. So it can be very, very helpful for people who want to make sure to get it right before they submit their application. And sometimes we find that people come back multiple times because what they're doing is complicated. It's all complicated. We'll just put it that way. IRB and research, this is complicated task, but some of your projects are a little more complicated than others. Just depends on how many populations, who they are, and what you're doing with them. So I'm going to take a look at, apologize for why I don't know this is not linking as easily as it did practice-wise, but let me bounce out there to our services. Again, I showed you that landing page, and you can use these buttons here. You can use our drop-down menu to get to either the group sessions, which is what I had described already, or our office hours, and I'll chat about that in a second. You can see that we have some resources here. So our PowerPoint presentations that we give in these sessions are available on the right-hand side. I'm sorry, we've changed that because PowerPoint presentations aren't always the best form of information. We made notes for our slides, and that's what's available here. So there's a lot of good detail here. If you're not able to find a session at the time that works for you, you can utilize these materials. You just don't get the feedback, right? So come to the session, you can get the feedback on your document. We have buttons here for you to choose which one you want to schedule: eligibility, recruitment, consent, or the one that we have for our application. Now, there's nothing to submit for your application one. We don't review your application. We just give an overview of what the application looks like, how to complete it. So it's a group session, but not a group writing session. So for instance, consent letters, there's a short description of it, directions for how to register. And then as you scroll down, you can see that there's actual registration sign up buttons. You'll be taken to a brief registration page where you'll enter your name, email address, and answer a couple other questions, and then upload your document. So you can see that this one is on the 11th, 6 days from now, which means if you sign up for it, you can come back to your registration in 5 days or less to upload your draft document. So you have up until 24 hours before the session to provide us with the document that you want us to review. So if you see one coming up and you want to make sure to grab a spot, but you haven't developed that material yet, just come back to your registration link that you get through email and upload that document at least 24 hours before the session, and we'll take a look at it and review it with you. This is true for all of our sessions. We have, again, the eligibility, recruitment, and consent that you can do this for. And to sign up for an IRB application session is the same. There's just nothing to submit along with it. If you want to look at every one of them, you can click this button and they're all in chronological order. But if you know what you're looking for, you can utilize these buttons to find the right session for you. It is important to note that we won't be able to make any determination about your study in one of these sessions. We can only help you with the document and the topic that you're there to discuss. So even though we're getting good feedback, you're getting it in written form, make sure that you follow that direction for the easiest possible application once you put it all together. So those are our 4 group sessions, our 3 group writing sessions, and our 1 application session. The other service that we provide is office hours. And again, we have those as regularly and self-scheduling so that you can find a time that works for you. We every now and again have people who can't find a time, doesn't work for their schedule, maybe they're full. If that is the case ever, email the IRB and say that very thing, and I will be in touch for a customized office hour around your schedule. So we have 15 minutes, and sometimes that's just enough time, and other times it's not. So you can always come back and reschedule an office hour with us as many times as you need. We're certainly focused on IRB matters. So if you have questions about your dissertation, questions about your design, your method, you know, this isn't really the place to come get help for that. That would be your chair and committee. But as you can see, in the bold here, we do talk about our processes, our procedures, our requirements, services. We can even talk about feedback that you received in one of your sessions if you have questions about it. Sometimes people will have a question about the application itself. They're stuck on a page, and we'll screen share, and I'll say, well, show me what you're stuck on, and we'll work our way through it. So office hours are really meant for everyone at any point, from the most introductory questions that you have to advanced questions for people who are potentially in the process of applying or in data collection, and they need specific guidance for how to move forward. So please take advantage of those. I'm going to scroll down just so I can show you that, again, we have self-schedulable, and each one is, you know, just one person at a time for 15 minutes. We release these every couple days. There's like a 2-week window that our system allows you to see what we've scheduled. So each day sessions open up. So if you're not finding one and you want to come back the next day, you may find one that's opened up for you. But again, for office hours, please be in touch with us if it's just not working out. For a group writing session, it's a little different. You know, that's a much more resource heavy thing for us. So we aren't able to offer those in a custom way, but office hours, we are. And I've shown you kind of where those webinars are. So please take a look at those as well. Upcoming, we're going to continue to hold webinars as frequently as we can. I think probably quarterly, something to walk away with, and on a variety of different topics. I think the next one I'm already thinking will be great to do recruitment. So the pitfalls of recruitment. We find that a lot of people have a hard time with recruitment. They have a great idea, and then when they go to enact it, it's one of those feasibility components. They actually can't get the people that they thought they were going to get. So something to think about for the future. All right. Now seems like a good time to stop and ask if there are any questions.
Yes, a couple of questions. Number one, I didn't really answer this. In your NCU alumni, are they allowed to go through IRB? I mean, they wouldn't go through IRB unless they were doing IRB associated with this institution. Is that right?
I do not believe that alum are able to use the IRB. I will certainly follow up and have that answer in our, email that we send, verify that. But I believe it's only current either employees or enrolled students that have access. IRBs can be very expensive at times. And I see our director is here. Hello. And is going to answer that question for us.
Yep, sorry, we might as well just get the information out there now.
For
So the only time that alumni are able to use our services is if they are partnered with a current NU employee, faculty, somebody who is eligible to serve as the primary investigator on whatever the research is. So you have to partner with somebody currently at the institution who has completed their CITI, who has the appropriate certifications and can serve as the principal investigator.
Well, thank you for that. Our director of our IRB, Dr. Munjan. How about another question or two?
Another one was, this was an interesting one. Is there a copy of the IRB application to read prior to having to fill it out? And there's for some certainty, I think, to be able to look ahead.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know that we do, but they can always go into the system, right?
That's right. So we'll show you here in a few minutes how to enter the application system, and you can go in at any time and do whatever you want in there. You can poke around, you can create a faux study, you can, if you have the information that you already need to start completing the application, you can do that and come back to it at any point, even if it's months later. The application does start off kind of small, and as you answer questions, it expands. So you would have to put some things into, even if they're not going to be the answers that you would ultimately leave in your application, you do have to answer each question on each page in order to open up the appropriate pages. So it may take a little while to see all of the different sections of the application, but it is available to you to go in and do that with. We would essentially, I guess, have to create a mock one and have it available in PDF form, potentially something to think about as our education team, and having that available on our website. So thank you for that question. I think that might be a good thing to do, but at the moment we don't have an example that you could look at. But again, I'll show you how to get into the system, and you can take a look around.
Chad, someone has their hand raised. Reslana, is that here?
Oh, okay. Yeah, do you want to take that question? Sure.
Yes. Hi. Sorry, I'm driving, so I decided to just raise my hand and just talk, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. So I had a question. I'm an administrator at a university, and so we have our own local IRB. So if I'm to do like research at our university, would I need to get a waiver of authorization, or is that too much? Like when I'm only in my second year now, but just kind of thinking ahead. What I
typically in these situations, the site kind of rules the day. So the key would be to find out what you would need to do for an IRB at your site. And likely they're going to ask you to apply. We would either need to see that approved application as part of your application to us, or a note from you that says that my IRB won't look at it until you've looked at it. So we do have those two scenarios that we see quite frequently. If the institution doesn't have an IRB or says that this, doesn't qualify for review from us, you would likely still need site permission from someone who can grant it at that site. For a K through 12 situation, that's typically a principal. For a university situation, it would just depend on what you're studying. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure. All right. And again, we do have some time for questions at the end, but we are approaching 8 o'clock. So I do want to make sure that we talk about the process for applications. All right, so again, these are hyperlinked and take you to pages on our website that involve the application itself, the directions for how to do the application. We have step-by-step help guides that I've shown you on our materials page already. So what I'd want to do now is show you our quick start guides and a little bit about what the application looks like. So if we go to our Submit to IRB page, you'll see that we have some directions here. This is our landing page with 2 subpages and a couple of videos about how to begin your application. All right, so how to start it, how to get into the application system and begin your application itself, how to complete the application. As I had alluded to earlier, as pages open up, more pages might open up. It just depends on what it is that you're doing. And it's a very nice, efficient program. So it doesn't ask you to fill out 15 pages when we only need 5 pages worth of info from you. So in order to apply, you would need to log in. And we have 2 different quick start guides and in this video, we go through both of them. So you can take a look in written format about how to log in and how to begin your application, or you can watch this video here and it goes through the same information. It really just depends on were you with NCU before the merger or not, because there are different ways to access Cayuse depending on which population you are. So for those of you that have NCU email addresses, you're a legacy NCU kind of considered through the IRB. That's the name we kind of use. And if you've always been with NU and always had an NU email address, then you would use this quick start guide. The only difference is the first step, how you log in. Once you're in Cayuse, it's the same for everybody. So Cayuse, of course, being the name of our application system. We have a dashboard overview, which is a nice video that helps you understand how to navigate the platform and then how to begin your application. We also have some other help documents for the various components of your application. And it's important to, think about doing this so that you're not doing this when you have to be doing this, right? It would be good to look at these ahead of time. Like I said, you can get into the application and you can start to experiment with the application if you want to. And there's a couple of sub pages here that you can utilize. Here's our definitions for folks, a lot of the same resources as well. So I'm not going to jump into these pages and look too specifically at these materials, since you can do that on your own. But I do want to show you just a few pages within the application. And this is essentially the end of the presentation. So this will just take a minute or two. We have a page here that helps you see what's kind of typical for an application. You'll have the general info all the way through the design, how you're going to recruit. So this is for a pretty basic adult human subject study. And you can see we have a couple more categories, including how you're going to get consent and various other components. For this particular example, this person is also going to be working with adults in an educational setting. So if you have questions about that, come to our recruitment group writing session. Take a look at our online resources to understand what you would need to produce for your application, depending on who your population is. Showing you this next view, I'm doing this because I wanted to show you there's times where you have to upload documents to your application. So here we are in the recruitment section, and you can see we have a couple of different ways that we're going to recruit our participants. We're going to post a link and we're going to email as well. So we need to see what it is that you're going to use as a material. And you can upload more than one document. So if you've chosen more than one mode of recruiting, you can show us all of your documents. Again, we're in the business of protecting human subjects. We need to see what materials you're putting out there for people to see, to be interested in, and ultimately agree to. So at several points in your application, you'll be asked to provide us with those. And of course, these are the very things that you can get help on in our group writing sessions. The last view of Cayuse that I wanted to show you is the informed consent one. Again, this one, I didn't have space to show you where you attach your consent material, but of course we want to see that too. But we also have text blocks where you have to describe what it is that you're doing. So if from our website, you're not able to determine the right process for gaining informed consent from your participants, come to our consent group writing session where you'll learn it and then be able to replicate that here in your application. It really does depend on how you're doing your study, who you're doing it with, and any kind of barriers that you need to get past in order to find and get your participants to volunteer as to how complex your application is. All right. Here's just a brief view of our process. And you can find this on our website as well. If you don't want to come back to this page, it's on the Submit to IRB page. Just briefly, you're going to submit and certify your application. Your chair is going to then confirm, certify is the language within Cayuse, that it's you, that it's the right student, right, kind of the right topic. And then we're going to do our pre-review, which usually just takes a day or two for us to determine, yeah, you have a complete application. We're not reviewing it. We're not making sure it's a right application, but there's nothing missing. There's no glaring errors. And so now it's time to assign it for review. So these first few steps might take a couple of days, depends on the chair, and if it's 1 day or 2 days essentially that it takes for us to do our pre-review. And then the analyst who's going to review your application takes 5 to 7 business days to do so. Once they determine how close your application is to acceptance, or if it is acceptable, the next step kicks in. You might be asked to do some revisions, or you might be approved and a determination letter will be sent. So you could be in these processes, these circular processes for a time or two if your application is not complete and up to snuff. We have different ways in which we provide feedback, and you go in and change whatever elements need changed. You resubmit, recertify, and it goes through the process again. So it can be a little time consuming if you're in the process for, say, 3 reviews. That might end up taking 3 weeks. So utilizing your time well, maybe coming to some group writing sessions, can shave off time in the application process, even for those people who learn really well from the written word. But we do find anecdotally that if you come to our group writing sessions, you really do move through quicker. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Just a couple of important reminders about our group writing sessions: eligibility, recruitment, consent, office hours, and some contact information. Go ahead and keep typing any questions into the chat. We'll keep it open for a few more minutes, and you can always use our email address to be in touch with us. I know we are at time. Glad we were able to answer some questions as we went. It seemed like a more interesting way to do it than for me to just talk for the entire time. And we look forward to being able to answer all of your questions in that secondary format. Emily, probably we're pretty tight, right, with our time expectations.
With time at this moment. But first of all, I just thank you so much to all the attendees and all of your questions in the chat. And Dr. Tribble, oh my goodness, you've been busy this whole time, and thank you so much for your expertise. And it's so wonderful to have the director of the IRB here as well. So really, I mean, Dr. Becker, thank you so much for coming and providing this session for the Skill Up. I know that so many students and staff have already said thank you so much. This has been extremely helpful. So we look forward to hopefully being able to provide additional resources moving forward in partnership, because we understand how critical this piece is for our doctoral students and their journey. So
wonderful.
Until the next time, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and keep the lookout for sending all the supplemental materials to you at some point tomorrow. Great. And we hope you have a good evening.
Thanks so much.
Take care.